October 1st, 2025. This Russian soldier is committing a brutal crime by violating all the rules of war. In this incident, which took place in the direction of Lyman, a Russian soldier broke into an elderly woman's house in the settlement of Novye and committed theft. However, a drone had spotted him. The soldier panicked and fled, heading towards the shelter where his own troops were hiding. The troops immediately took action to punish the enemy for this move. The enemy fled to their shelter, allowing Ukrainian troops to detect them. The MERA Unmanned Aerial Systems Battalion, affiliated with the 66th Mechanized Brigade, carried out successive attacks on the enemy's shelter. This crime committed by enemy soldiers was punished shortly thereafter by Ukrainian kamikaze drones. September 17, 2025. Ukraine's elite SICARIO drone team is conducting a night operation. They carried out a large-scale operation using unmanned aerial vehicles against Russian forces' positions in the forested area. Bombs dropped from the drones caused massive explosions in enemy positions. Russian soldiers were attempting to hide in such wooded areas. However, Ukrainian forces succeeded in neutralizing them with a night raid. Reconnaissance drones had spotted Russian infantry hidden in specific locations during daytime operations. The reconnaissance team chose to pass on the information they gathered to a team that excels in this type of operation. This intelligence was passed on to the SICARIO unit. The team chose nighttime as the most suitable time frame. As a result, the enemy suffered a devastating blow. Many Russian soldiers were neutralized. October 1st, 2025. Russian soldiers are seen exiting their shelters. Eyes in the sky spot them. The moment enemy soldiers spot the Ukrainian drone, they immediately try to retreat back to the shelter. However, the FPV drone had locked onto the enemy. It made a sudden maneuver and dove toward the entrance of the enemy's shelter. The kamikaze drone's first attack caused damage at the entrance of the shelter. The unit resolutely launched successive attacks on the enemy shelter, and eventually the shelter's door was destroyed. And the final blow comes. The FPV kamikaze drone plunged into the shelter and succeeded in neutralizing the Russian infantry. October 1st, 2025. Ukrainian forces continue cleanup operations in the Sumy region. A parachute unit attached to the Air Assault Brigade had detected Russian soldiers hiding deep in the forest during operations near the village of Unyielding in the Sumy region. The fighting lasted for a long time. Ukrainian soldiers managed to corner the Russian soldiers. It was clear that the enemy soldiers were running out of ammunition. Ukrainian soldiers wanted to take Russian soldiers prisoner. Persuasion efforts began. They talked to them, and after a while they managed to convince the enemy infantry to surrender. The Russian soldiers dropped their weapons and began moving toward the point indicated by the Ukrainian infantry. Shortly thereafter, the Russian infantry were taken prisoner at the designated point. A Ukrainian infantryman was advancing with the surrendered soldiers. But the Russian forces saw this via their drones and launched a ruthless attack. They attacked their own comrades who had surrendered with a kamikaze drone. After the first attack, they sent a second kamikaze drone to completely destroy their own comrades. With the second drone also exploding, the surrendered soldiers tried to escape in different directions to save their lives. The Russian forces did not want their surrendering comrades to survive. Without hesitation, they launched another kamikaze drone. This time, they did not want to miss their comrades. The ruthless enemy Russian forces carried out a third attack, killing their own comrades. October 4th, 2025. Advancing on the battlefield by bicycle? That's a really interesting tactic. The Russian army has previously been seen attempting to infiltrate Ukrainian positions using various motorized vehicles. But this time, infantry attempting to infiltrate Ukrainian positions by bicycle caught the attention. The Ukrainian soldiers immediately detected this movement by the Russian infantry. Ukraine's Magyar unit quickly responded with an FPV kamikaze drone to show the enemy that they were using the wrong tactic. When the drone caught up with him, he resorted to a freeze tactic. The drone operator maneuvered, locked onto the enemy, and attacked fiercely. As a result of the violent collision, The careless enemy soldier realized his mistake, but it was too late. October 4th, 2025. Russian soldiers were advancing on foot toward Ukrainian positions. However, they had entered the red zone. There was a drone command center nearby. Ukraine's FPV kamikaze drone had locked onto them. The drone pilot approached them very quietly. There was a violent collision with the soldier in the rear. This effective attack wounded the enemy infantryman. The other infantryman immediately pulled his friend to the side, but a second FPV had already started moving toward them again. There is a violent explosion. This time, the Russian infantryman does not survive. Another Russian soldier roaming the area was trying to hide by crawling through dense vegetation, but the eagle-eyed FPV drones had spotted him. The operator locked onto the enemy soldier and began to descend sharply. The drone exploded in a violent collision. A second attack completely incapacitated the enemy. Here's another infantryman trying the same tactic. He thought he was being cautious, advancing carefully, perhaps frightened by the nearby explosion. Crawling forward is a good strategy in war, but in the age of drones, these tactics are becoming obsolete. The drones could easily see the soldier's hiding spot from the sky. A sudden, hard crash to the ground, when he least expected it, had ended him. October 4th, 2025. A Ukrainian Air Force MiG-29 fighter jet took to the skies. The aircraft was loaded with HIMARS guided bombs. Acting on information received by the Air Force, the pilot took action for the mission. The aircraft pilot quickly reached the location where Russian ground forces were stationed. After locking onto the target, he fired the guided bombs. The bombs fired caused near-total destruction among the Russian ground forces. October 4th, 2025. A reconnaissance drone had spotted Russian infantry lying among the bushes. The Russian soldier realized it was just a reconnaissance drone. Therefore, he did not choose to flee. Instead, he moved around comfortably. But the kamikaze drone had already set off. The target was enemy infantry. The drone operator began to glide silently. He marked the Russian infantry from the sky and made a sudden dive. The enemy soldier, unaware of anything, heard only a buzzing sound. He immediately tried to escape, but seconds later, a huge explosion occurred. The Russian soldier was injured and disappeared without even looking back. October 1st, 2025. Tanks are known as the most monstrous weapons of the Ukraine-Russia war. However, the deadliest weapon of this war is now FPV drones. In particular, the Ukrainian army is using kamikaze drones to neutralize enemy soldiers with surgical precision. The Ukrainian army uses drones to first locate the enemy's hiding spots. Subsequently, the identified enemy soldiers are eliminated with effective attacks. In this operation, Russian soldiers had chosen villages in Ukraine, which the civilian population had been forced to abandon, as both a shelter and a staging point. However, Ukrainian forces were constantly conducting reconnaissance activities in these areas. During these operations, enemy troop movements were detected in a village. The unit immediately took action with multiple kamikaze drones. Seconds later, violent explosions occurred at the points where the enemy was hiding. After successive attacks, the Russian soldiers in this village were successfully neutralized. In the final stage, the Russian flag hoisted by the enemy in this village was also destroyed. September 22, 2025. The Russian army's aggression and ruthlessness have reduced Ukrainian territory to this state. Drone footage recorded in the village of Krynky in the Kherson region shows life has been destroyed. There has been no fighting in the village for about a year, but all the houses in this settlement have been destroyed by airstrikes and artillery fire. The burned land has begun to grow green again due to these attacks. Although there is no fighting, the traces of war are still very visible here. The successes of the Ukrainian defense have begun to show their effect in the region. The Ukrainian army continues to fight with great determination against the enemy Russian army so that life can resume in these lands. Their sole aim is to revive the life that once existed here. Thanks to the successful operations carried out by the Ukrainian army in recent times, The Ukrainian people may one day resettle in this village and life can continue where it left off. Units carry out patrols every day in abandoned villages like this. This is because Russian forces use abandoned villages as staging points for attempted attacks on Ukrainian positions. Reconnaissance efforts prevent enemy forces from infiltrating these areas. Even the smallest attempts are detected by drones. September 2025. A Russian UAZ Bukhanka vehicle entered a mined route equipped with electromagnetic detonators placed by Ukrainian unmanned aerial vehicles. The mines on the route were triggered remotely. The Russian vehicle managed to survive the first explosion. However, Ukrainian defenses had used multiple mines. After the vehicle advanced a few more meters, the other mines were also remotely detonated. This time, the Russian crew could not escape the mines. These high-impact mines rendered the vehicle unusable. Some of the Russian soldiers were neutralized, while others were wounded and evacuated from the scene.